There is a lie that women have been living for decades, a lie that has quietly sabotaged their love lives in ways they can hardly imagine. For years, I've heard the same question, asked in countless forms during therapy sessions. What do men really want? Every time I hear this question, I feel a mix of compassion and frustration. Because the question itself reveals the deeper issue. The truth is, women have been taught to ask what men want, when in reality, they should be asking, who am I? Really? They've been conditioned to shape their personalities around what they think is attractive. When, in fact, what truly captivates a mature man is the opposite, a woman who refuses to mold herself for anyone. In over 3 decades of guiding people through therapeutic transformation, I've witnessed something remarkable. Women who arrived exhausted from years of trying to decode men suddenly became natural magnets for authentic attraction the moment they stopped trying. It wasn't magic. It was applied neuroscience. The male brain, especially after the age of 35, develops highly refined authenticity detectors. It has encountered enough shallow conversations, emotional performances, and curated personas to cultivate an almost instinctive sensitivity to what is real. When a mature man meets a truly authentic woman, something deep and visceral is triggered in his limbic system. This response is not random. It aligns with specific neurological patterns associated with emotional safety and relational stability. A man who has navigated complex relationships no longer seeks perfection. He seeks emotional reliability. And authenticity is the most powerful signal of that reliability. But authenticity is not simply about being natural. The kind of authenticity that creates real psychological arousal contains very specific components, and most women are unaware of them. The first, emotional presence without the need for validation. Picture a woman who can hold a deep, meaningful conversation without anxiety about being liked. Who can express disagreement without fearing rejection? Who can sit comfortably in silence without rushing to fill the space with empty words? This kind of emotional solidity triggers a powerful response in the male nervous system. I call it active relaxation. He relaxes because he senses emotional safety. And yet, he's activated because in a world drowning in superficiality, emotional presence is magnetic. Over the years, I've noticed a striking pattern among couples who thrive in therapy. Men describe their most fulfilling partners with words like calm, grounded, real. They never say perfect, impressive, or spectacular. Male psychological desire is fueled by substance, not spectacle. The second, unmasked joy. I'm not talking about constant happiness or forced optimism. I mean the genuine ability to find joy in everyday life, to bring lightness without trying to be entertaining, to laugh at one's own flaws without self-pity. This kind of joy creates a fascinating neurological effect on the male brain. It stimulates the same regions activated by natural rewards such as food, music, or affection. Neuroscientists call it positive conditioning. A man begins to associate a woman's presence with emotional nourishment, not because she's trying to win him over, but because her emotional frequency resonates with truth. And here's what I've seen time and again. Unmasked joy is only possible when there is peace with one's own story. A woman who has done her inner work, who has processed her past and integrated her wounds without turning them into her identity, who can speak of her life honestly, without victimhood or self-glorification, radiates a calmness that is felt, sensed, breathed. And to a man who is seeking something real, that calmness is profoundly soothing. Let me share something that completely transformed how I understand mature attraction. A few years ago, a patient said something I've never forgotten. She told me, I stopped worrying about whether he liked me. And instead, she started asking, do I like myself when I'm with him? In that one sentence lies one of the deepest truths about the psychology of attraction. When a woman steps out of performance mode, and begins to genuinely assess whether the man in front of her deserves her energy, her presence, her time, an energetic shift occurs. Suddenly, the man is no longer evaluating her. He begins to wonder if he is worthy of her. This reversal of dynamics is powerful, not because it's manipulative, but because it aligns with a deeper psychological reality. The third element, communication from the emotional center. I've listened to thousands of hours of couples conversations over the years, and I can instantly tell when a woman is speaking from her center versus when she's speaking from anxiety. The difference is palpable, not only in what she says, but in how she says it, the rhythm, the tone, the silences between her words. When a woman communicates from her emotional center, every word feels intentional. There's no rush to explain, no urgency to be understood, no need to impress. Only the quiet confidence that her voice matters. This kind of centered communication creates a unique effect in a man. He becomes fully present, fully attuned, not because he's being pushed, but because he senses he's in the presence of someone worth listening to. But there's more. Centered communication also means knowing how to listen. Most people listen to respond, to fix, to relate. But a woman who has cultivated genuine emotional presence listens without agenda. She listens to understand, to connect, to simply be with the other person in that moment. And this kind of listening is incredibly rare, which is why it's so incredibly magnetic. I've heard men describe conversations with these women using words like deep, meaningful, different, not because they discussed complex ideas, but because the quality of presence transformed the exchange. Even a conversation about the weather can become a moment of intimacy when that kind of presence is involved. What mature men are truly drawn to. This brings me to a critical insight I've gathered through decades of therapeutic work. Mature men are not psychologically aroused by women who need to be rescued, entertained, or constantly reassured. They are drawn powerfully to women who have developed what I call emotional sovereignty. Emotional sovereignty is not cold detachment. It's not the I don't need anyone armor. It is the inner authority to feel without collapsing, to express without projecting, to relate without clinging. It's the ability to feel sadness without blaming, frustration without attacking, joy without needing others to validate it by mirroring it. And here's the paradox. The more emotionally self-sufficient a woman is, the more desirable she becomes. Neurologically, this has a clear explanation. The male brain interprets emotional sovereignty as a sign of genetic strength and relational stability. On a deep, unconscious level, he senses that this is a woman who won't create chaos from unresolved needs. She won't turn the relationship into a battlefield of emotional reactivity. She brings peace not because life is easy, but because she knows how to hold herself. The misunderstanding that pushes men away. But emotional sovereignty shows up in small, often overlooked ways. One of the most powerful? The ability to have deep, emotional conversations without turning them into therapy sessions. I've seen extraordinary women with rich inner lives and powerful intuition, lose a man's interest because they mistook emotional intimacy for emotional dumping. They share too much, too soon. Not out of manipulation, but out of a misunderstood definition of vulnerability. Authentic vulnerability is magnetic, but only when it matches the level of trust that's being earned. Oversharing early on doesn't create connection. It creates emotional burden. It doesn't show openness. It reveals a lack of boundaries. I recall a woman who came to me heartbroken. Men kept pulling away after just a few promising days. As we looked closer, she realized she had a habit of sharing her entire life story, traumas, losses, heartbreaks by the second date. Her intention was pure. She wanted transparency. But what she didn't realize was that true vulnerability is timed. It unfolds gradually with care and calibration. And emotional boundaries? They are not walls. They're invitations for respectful closeness. This brings me to the fourth element I've identified, the ability to cultivate what I call sustained curiosity. From my experience, women who keep a man's psychological arousal alive over time are those who remain, in a sense, a partial enigma. Not because they're playing games or putting on a facade of mystery, but because they are continually growing, evolving, and unveiling new facets of themselves. Sustained curiosity is powered by genuine individuality. A woman who pursues her own interests, forms her own perspectives, and engages in independent experiences becomes a constant source of novelty. She is not predictable, not due to chaos, but because she is vibrantly alive, in motion, and immersed in an ongoing journey of self-discovery. Men often describe this experience in remarkably similar terms. She always surprises me. I never quite know what she's going to say next. She sees the world in a way no one else does. This controlled unpredictability is deeply stimulating to the male brain, which is naturally wired to detect patterns and solve problems. The key distinction lies between authentic mystery and manufactured mystery, a difference rooted in their origin. The former authentic mystery is born from inner richness, the latter from strategy. Authentic mystery naturally arises from a woman who possesses layers, depth, and parts of her life and personality that unfold gradually. Manufactured mystery, in contrast, is simply the calculated withholding of information. A crucial aspect of sustained curiosity is what I call inner life richness. A woman who reads, reflects, and holds well-formed opinions on a variety of topics, who can engage in conversations about art, philosophy, politics, or any subject that genuinely interests her, becomes an intellectually stimulating partner. But there is a fifth element I consider fundamental, the ability to create what I call emotional refuge without therapy. I've seen relationships falter when women confuse the role of partner with that of therapist. A man needs to express his vulnerabilities without feeling as if he's in a therapy session. True emotional refuge is created through presence, not interpretation, through empathetic listening, not unsolicited advice, through unconditional acceptance, not attempts to fix or improve. When a man finds a woman who can be present with his imperfections without trying to change them, something deep within his attachment system is activated. This capacity for emotional refuge is directly linked to a woman's emotional maturity. An emotionally mature woman does not feel responsible for fixing her partner's problems, does not interpret his emotional states as personal attacks, and does not require him to always be at his best to feel safe in the relationship. A few years ago, I worked with a couple where the man shares something deeply revealing. With her, I can be human. I don't have to be perfect. I don't always have to be strong. I don't have to protect her from my difficult moments. I can just be me. The ability to allow another person to be fully human is extraordinarily rare and profoundly valuable. This brings us to a key distinction, the difference between emotional support and emotional fusion. Emotional support maintains healthy boundaries, respects autonomy, and offers presence without losing one's identity. Emotional fusion, on the other hand, breeds codependency, relational anxiety, and ultimately unconscious rejection. I've observed that men are deeply drawn to women who can be close without merging, who offer companionship without intrusion, who love without losing themselves. This ability to love from a place of personal integrity is magnetic because it is rare, and what is rare, once again, becomes valuable. The sixth element I've identified is the ability to maintain what I call emotional erotic tension. I do not mean manipulation or psychological games. Rather, I refer to the capacity to hold a space of mystery, to avoid revealing everything immediately, to dose intimacy so that there is always something left to discover. This emotional erotic tension is preserved when the woman has her own life, when she isn't constantly available, when she maintains private individual spaces. It's not calculated coldness, it's personal wholeness that naturally creates desire and anticipation. Over the years, I've noticed that relationships that lose excitement quickly are often those where one partner, frequently the woman, becomes entirely transparent and available from the start. Total transparency kills mystery. Without mystery, curiosity fades, and with it, psychological arousal. Emotional erotic tension is also connected to what psychologists call intermittent reinforcement. When a woman is always available, always predictable, always giving the same response, the male brain adapts. But when there is variation moments of closeness mixed with personal space, neurological activation is maintained. A key concept I've developed through my work is selective availability. A magnetic woman is not equally available to everyone. She has standards, she has criteria, she consciously chooses where and with whom she invests her time and emotional energy. This selective availability is not arrogance or disdain. It is self-respect. It is the understanding that your time, attention, and emotional energy are valuable resources that deserve to be offered deliberately. A mature man respects and is deeply attracted to a woman who values herself enough not to make herself indiscriminately available. But there is a seventh element I consider the most powerful of all, the ability to generate what I call mutual inspiration. I have observed that the most successful couples are those where both partners inspire each other to become better versions of themselves, not through demands or criticism, but through personal example. A woman who lives her life with passion, pursues her dreams with determination, and treats herself with respect and kindness, naturally inspires a man to raise his own standards, not out of competition, but through emotional contagion. Personal excellence is magnetic because it is rare. This mutual inspiration is rooted in what I call reciprocal admiration. When a woman cultivates admirable qualities, she doesn't just attract admiration, she also feels admiration for her partner. This dynamic of mutual admiration becomes the most powerful fuel for sustained psychological attraction. I have witnessed relationships that maintain passion for decades because both partners remain admirable. They keep growing, surprising, and inspiring each other to reach ever higher versions of themselves. This does not happen by chance, it happens by conscious choice. Mutual inspiration also involves what I call parallel growth. Two people growing in the same direction while maintaining their individuality, supporting each other's personal development without losing themselves in the process. I recall a couple who came to my office after 15 years together, not because of problems, but because they wanted to deepen their connection. What struck me most was how each spoke about the other not as someone predictable or fully known, but as someone still evolving, still fascinating, still worthy of admiration. The eighth element I've identified is the ability to maintain what I call emotional generosity without personal sacrifice. The most psychologically attractive women I've observed are those who can give deeply without giving themselves away, who can be generous without becoming martyrs. This emotional generosity shows up in small acts, genuinely celebrating their partner's success, offering support without expecting immediate reciprocity, and creating special moments without making them feel like obligations. But this only works when generosity flows from personal abundance, never from emotional scarcity. This distinction is crucial. Generosity from abundance is magnetic because it is free, spontaneous, and genuine. Generosity from scarcity is manipulative, an attempt to fill internal voids through the other person, and this is unconsciously perceived, leading to rejection rather than attraction. Authentic emotional generosity also includes the ability to give space when needed, not take distance personally, and understand that mature love involves natural rhythms of closeness and separation, both healthy and necessary. One essential aspect of this generosity is what I call celebration without appropriation. A magnetic woman can celebrate her partner's success without needing to claim ownership of it. She can be proud of him without tying his achievements to her own self-worth. This emotional independence is incredibly attractive. Finally, the ninth element I consider fundamental is the ability to maintain what I call conscious emotional stability. I don't mean the absence of emotions or emotional perfection. I mean the ability to feel emotions without being ruled by them. An emotionally stable woman can feel sadness without sinking into despair, anger without exploding in aggression, and joy without spiraling into mania. This kind of conscious emotional regulation is deeply reassuring for a mature man seeking a stable relationship. Conscious emotional stability is built over years of self-knowledge, personal growth, and learning one's own emotional patterns. It doesn't happen overnight, but it may be the most valuable investment a woman can make if she seeks a mature and lasting relationship. For decades, I've observed that men may initially be drawn to emotional intensity, but they build lasting bonds with emotional stability. Emotional intensity is like sugar. It provides a quick burst of energy but does not sustain. Emotional stability is like protein. It offers long-lasting nourishment. Stability also means the ability to maintain perspective during conflict, avoid dramatizing everyday situations, and distinguish between what truly matters and what is merely an annoyance. This emotional maturity creates a safe and predictable relational environment. A concept I've developed to describe this is what I call a calming presence. A woman who has achieved genuine emotional stability radiates a calm that is contagious. Her presence neither creates anxiety nor stirs up drama. It doesn't add turbulence to a man's life. On the contrary, it brings serenity and balance. This calming presence is especially precious for men with stressful jobs, complex family responsibilities, or demanding public lives. Coming home to a space of emotional peace is profoundly valuable and therefore deeply attractive. But emotional stability does not mean the absence of passion or intensity. Rather, it means having the ability to choose when and how to express emotions in ways that are constructive rather than destructive to the relationship. All of these elements are not techniques to be applied superficially. They are qualities developed internally through a profound process of self-discovery and personal growth. They cannot be faked because they emerge from genuine transformation of personality and character. True psychological arousal in a man isn't triggered by manipulation. It is sparked by becoming a woman who is genuinely attractive. And a genuinely attractive woman is not perfect. She is authentic. She is not invulnerable. She is courageous. She is not coldly independent. She is warmly sovereign. Over the years, I have noticed that women who cultivate these qualities not only attract higher quality men, but also experience deeper fulfillment within themselves. The personal development that leads to authentic attraction inevitably leads to personal fulfillment. There is a direct correlation between a woman's level of personal growth and the quality of men she attracts, not because she is chasing better men, but because her own evolution makes her magnetic to those who have also done the inner work. Through decades of practice, I have observed that the most successful relationships form between people who have reached similar levels of emotional maturity, not necessarily measured by external achievements, but by inner development, self-awareness, and the capacity to love in a mature way. After all these years supporting people in their personal growth and relationships, I've arrived at a conclusion that may seem paradoxical. The woman who most deeply excites a mature man is often the one who least needs to excite him. She has built a life so full, so rich, so satisfying that a man feels privileged to be invited into it. This personal abundance is not selfishness. It is maturity. It is not coldness. It is security. It is not manipulation. It is authenticity. In a world where so many live from emotional lack, personal abundance becomes naturally magnetic. It manifests in the ability to enjoy one's own company, in pursuing independent goals and dreams, in maintaining meaningful friendships, and in cultivating personal talents and skills. A woman who lives from a place of abundance does not need a relationship to feel complete, but when she chooses one, she deeply enriches it. In the end, true psychological arousal is not something you do, it is something you are. It is not a strategy to apply, it is a way of life to build. This way of life, rooted in self-knowledge, self-acceptance, and continuous growth, doesn't just attract mature men, it transforms them, inspires them, and invites them to become better versions of themselves. And that, perhaps, is the true magic of mature love. It is not about finding someone to complete you. It is about becoming someone who inspires others to complete themselves. When two whole people meet, they do not merge, they amplify each other, creating something greater than the sum of their parts. This kind of mutual transformation is a natural outcome when two people have done the inner work necessary to truly love themselves. Because only when we have learned to genuinely love ourselves can we offer authentic love to another human being.